It's Monday, May 17th. I'm Aaron Henkin. Baltimore's mayor says it's not yet time to lift the city's mask mandates. As the economy slowly comes back, Baltimore County looks to get its unemployed residents back into the workforce. And the county's libraries open their doors once again to book browsers. It's the Daily Dose from WYPR, our latest reporting on Maryland's COVID-19 response and the local news of the day, made possible by GBMC Healthcare. This afternoon, Baltimore officials announced that the city will not lift current mask mandates at indoor and outdoor venues until 65% of Baltimoreans have received at least one dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. WYPR's Emily Sullivan reports.
Mayor Brandon Scott has a history of setting firmer pandemic restrictions than Governor Larry Hogan, who lifted Maryland's mask mandate for most settings over the weekend. Hogan cited recently updated guidelines from the CDC, which says that vaccinated people can forego masks in nearly all places. But citywide vaccination rates are far lower than those statewide. 41% of Baltimoreans have gotten at least one dose, compared to 65% of all Marylanders.
This is about protecting yourselves and those around you.
Scott says keeping the city's masking restrictions will protect the large majority of Baltimoreans who are not fully vaccinated, and that now is the time for those residents to get their vaccine. I'm Emily Sullivan reporting for 88.1 WYPR.
The Maryland Department of Health has confirmed another 212 cases of COVID-19 today. That's the lowest number of new cases the state has had since March of last year. Maryland's 7-day positivity rate is now at its lowest level since September at just over 2.5%. The state's coronavirus death toll is now 8,740. More than 2.5 million Marylanders have now been fully vaccinated against the virus. Governor Larry Hogan announced today that $192.9 million in federal funds will go to local jurisdictions for emergency rental assistance. That's in addition to the $143 million of federal funds that Hogan allocated in January to 8 of Maryland's largest jurisdictions, including Baltimore City. Hogan also announced that the state's housing department is reopening its assisted housing relief program. And dumping trash illegally could soon come with a hefty price tag in Baltimore. Tonight, the city council will take another look at a measure that would double the fine for illegal dumping. The Neighbors Against Predatory Dumping Act would hit first-time violators with a $1,000 fine or up to 90 days in jail. Along Frederick Road in Catonsville, there are help wanted signs dotting the windows of restaurants and bars. Even though the coronavirus pandemic is easing, thousands of Baltimore County residents are not going back to work. WYPR's John Lee reports business owners and government officials are trying to figure out how to get those unemployed people back into the workforce.
Sharon Andrews owns Ship's Cafe in Catonsville.
We can't hire anybody. Nobody wants to work.
She says before the pandemic, she had a waiting list of people who wanted a job. Now she has 6 vacancies she can't fill. She's had to cut back hours.
We can get bussers and hostesses, but we can't get line cooks or dishwashers and a lot of the guys that were worked here before, we've called, they're not returning our calls because they're making money on unemployment.
During the pandemic, unemployment checks have been bigger. Also, people collecting the benefit have not been required to show they're looking for work. Last week, Governor Hogan said that requirement will be back in place soon. He said he's hearing from business owners across the state.
It's not just anecdotal. I mean, there's no question there are some people that have made the decision to stay home and to collect unemployment rather than returning to work. We hear that every day from hundreds of people.
Mike Ricci, the governor's communications director, tells WYPR that the work search requirement should be back in place by late June. While that may push people collecting unemployment checks to look for a job, there are others for whom it won't. According to the county, there are about 30,000 fewer residents who are working now than when the COVID-19 pandemic started. More than 22,000 of them are not collecting unemployment and have dropped off the radar. Towson University economist Darius Arani says nationally there's been a dramatic increase in the number of people who are jobless but not being counted. He says they include women who dropped out of the labor force when schools closed and they didn't have childcare.
But then in other individuals, such as individuals who work for restaurants, their jobs disappeared, so they are not actively looking for work.
Arani adds those jobs pay low wages and rely on tips from fewer customers. Others are hesitant about rejoining the workforce after months of sheltering from COVID-19. Leonard Howey, Baltimore County's Economic Development Director, says the county wants to find those uncounted people to either help them get work or train for the jobs that are available.
Anything that requires the people to get out, interact, and to move things around in this new economy, that's where it's really heating up.
For instance, jobs as truck drivers in distribution warehouses and onloading and offloading ships at Trade Point Atlantic in eastern Baltimore County. One small business in Catonsville had no trouble filling a vacancy. Brian Higgins is the general manager of Bill's Music.
We put an ad in just a couple weeks ago, and we got a ton of responses, quite a bit of them, more than actually go through, and a lot of really good qualified responses.
Howey expects the county's Economic Development Department to be a lot busier finding people jobs in the months ahead once its 3 career centers reopen and the work search requirement is reinstated for those on unemployment.
And our job is to make sure that we connect them to the opportunities that are out there and that we work hard to actually grow the opportunities as well.
For Sharon Andrews at Ship's Cafe, that can't come soon enough.
People want to come out and have parties. I'm like, we really can't. We just don't have enough people to wait on you or cook for you.
Baltimore County's unemployment rate stands at 6.3%. Just before the pandemic, it was half that. I'm John Lee reporting for 88.1 WIPR.
Baltimore County Public Libraries reopened for browsing today. After months of curbside service and online programming, this is the next step towards normal. Allison Mollenkamp reports.
With 4 days left until reopening, staff at the Woodlawn branch of the Baltimore County Public Library have a checklist.
Let's move these things into the meeting room because they don't need to be here, right?
The work is mostly devoted to putting the library back to a semblance of normal. Branch manager Zeke White points to all the COVID changes. Toys are gone from the kids' area, every other computer is covered with a plastic bag, and furniture blocks off the bookshelves.
And of course that will be moved as we open for browsing.
And the caution tape will come down.
Assistant library manager Kate Sigler is helping set up for the reopening. She says it's been hard not running the library as a welcoming space.
We had to make the space as uninviting as possible during COVID, and because we've had people coming in for computer appointments, but we wanted to discourage them from browsing, from using the children's area.
But that's all changing now. While patrons can still get materials curbside, they can also come into the library to browse.
So every day, roll this cart out, set up curbside.
Each branch has a limit on the number of customers who can browse at one time. Patrons will be asked to socially distance and wear masks. Service will be as contactless as possible. Circulation manager Shirley Mason says the decision to allow browsing was guided by science.
More people get vaccinated, the positivity rate drops, the hospitalizations drop, and the health department is also guiding the counties on what to do and when to move forward.
The library hopes to bring back in-person programs like Storytime in the fall. Normal is still a few months in the future. White says in their reopening so far, they're starting to hear from customers who are grateful for the library.
I left in tears because this person helped me. Those kind of stories that we're starting to get again. We're used to that almost on a daily basis. And so to get back to that and to have some sort of semblance of normalcy, I'm really excited about, and I think the staff are really looking forward to reconnecting with the community too.
The community shares that excitement. Patrons often come to the door and ask if they're allowed back in yet. The library staff is happy to finally have a positive answer. Mark Miller's library of choice is the Arbutus branch. He says his family likes the curbside service, but this new stage of reopening could allow them to return to how they used the library pre-pandemic.
We browse at the library a lot. The library is lovely to visit. We use it for a lot of comic books. My son loves comic books.
Miller and his family still plan to take COVID into account as they consider their return to the library.
We're fully vaccinated, but my son is not old enough to be fully vaccinated. So we're going to, I guess, play it by ear.
Local therapist Ashley Nicole Sullivan is looking forward to the library's return as a public space.
For one thing, it's obviously going to be a sign of recovery and hope for people. But on the broader sense, libraries are actually a really integral part of our community and what helps people feel connected to a larger group.
Sullivan says libraries serve an important function by providing a space for people to learn new skills and to connect with other community resources. But they benefit people in smaller ways, too. Mason recalls talking to a customer at curbside pickup.
And I was telling her when we would be reopening and the things that would be available. And she said, and you can add chat time to that too. And I said, I totally understand.
Chat time and browsing will run from 10 to 6 Monday through Thursday and 10 to 3 on Friday and Saturday. I'm Allison Mollenkamp for 88.1 WYPR.
That's going to wrap it up for today's episode of The Daily Dose. We'll be here for you again tomorrow. The Daily Dose is brought to you by WYPR, made possible by GBMC Healthcare. Big thanks to the WYPR news team, Rachel Bay, John Lee, Joel McCord, Emily Sullivan, and Sarah Y. Kim. Our digital content director is Jamila Krempel, and our general manager is LaFontaine Oliver. The executive editor of The Daily Dose is Danielle Irby. Stay healthy, stay sane, and stand together. I'm Aaron Hinken. Thanks for listening.